What's up, Inkie peeps? It's Inkie Quill, and I'm here with an art journal process video for you today. Today I'm using one of the images that I harvested from the image harvesting video that we just did, and I really like this picture because of her eyes. They were very blue and sparkly. I do like eyes. And so what I'm doing is, the reason why I picked this image to harvest in the first place is because it was an easy one to cut out, and that's one of the most important things, I think. So I'm actually going to make her into some long flowing locks and a bit of a floral headdress. And so I'm grabbing some of my Dilutions paints. Now these paints, if you haven't used them before, they're fabulous. I really like them. I'm not sponsored, endorsed or anything by them, but I think they go a really long way in your art journaling, and they're quite thin, so they're good for your art journals because they dry quickly and they don't chunk it up too much, and they've got a matte finish so that you can write on them, you can stick on them, you can do anything on them afterwards. They're not very textury, like they're not a really heavy paint. So I knew where I wanted my girl, and I kind of roughly sketched out where her flowing locks would be. And then it was time to just add some paint. Now be warned, every art journal page has an ugly stage, and this is the ugly stage. I'm just slapping paint on. I have no plan except that I want paint in the background. And what I actually decided to do is I grabbed my Use It Up journal, which if you don't follow me on my second YouTube channel, Let's Get Inky. Oh no, I do pull it out on Inkie Quill a bit. It's just a Dilutions A5 creative journal, and I just, when I've got extra paint, I just plonk it in there because I can go back and the art journal background is already done. So I've just got, this is actually my crappiest paintbrush. It's the one that I usually use for PVA glue and gesso. I don't know why I decided to use it. I think because I wanted a big brush, but I have better big brushes. Who knows? Like I said, this is the ugly stage, and I am literally just slapping paint on anywhere I can. I'm not drying it in between. I'm really liking the way that because the paintbrush has had so much abuse, it's quite gluggy and the bristles are kind of stuck together, and it's giving it a bit of a liney texture, which I really do like. And I'm putting some in my Use It Up journal because I'm going to use it as a background for next month's printables. So stay tuned for that. So you will get something in your printables next month that have this background pattern on it, and I do add a lot to it, so it's not just like this. I decided to add a little bit of grey just as kind of a streaky feature. And in the end, I do a lot of stenciling over this and writing and all sorts of things. So a lot of it does get covered up, but I knew I just wanted big blocks of colour to start off with. Now this stencil, I don't know what brand it is. I'm sorry. It could be some sort of Tim Holtz maybe. And I'm just using the black Dilutions to just do some messy black kind of patterns in the background, and afterwards I add some white over the top. So just a little something. I haven't really done something like this before. I saw Shannon Green on YouTube try something with the black stencil then the white over the top, and I really like the look of it. This, I'm pretty sure, is also maybe a Tim Holtz stencil, and I've just grabbed a really, really chunky white paintbrush. It's very bristly, and I'm just smashing that white paint through the stencils. No real technique, and it's not completely opaque because the Dilutions paints are quite thin, so it's not totally not totally opaque. You still can see through it, but I kind of like that. It gives it a bit of a I don't know, it just kind of makes the layers flow together rather than being stuck on top of each other. So if you wanted to try something like this at home, you could use any stencils you like. You can use anything from around the house. You can use bubble wrap. You could use packaging from something that has a cool pattern on it. You don't have to own a million different stencils to do something like this. It's all about the colors that you use and the order that you put them on. So you can see that black stencil, the leafy kind of one, fades into the background because the white is on top of it, but you could have a completely different look by reversing the colors and the order of the stencils. Then what I did is I got a paint pen and I just outlined all of those white circly shapes. I did that off camera because it took quite a while. And now I'm adding some matte gel medium to glue this girl down. So I'm just using that same paintbrush. Everything is dry though. Be warned that sometimes the paints can react a little bit to having liquid on them, so just be careful with that. And I'm just sticking it down with matte gel medium. The reason I'm using that, I don't want to use double-sided tape, because if I put layers over the top, you will be able to see the outline of the tape underneath it. I didn't want to use glue stick because I find that I get glue everywhere. And so I decided to use the matte gel medium because it kind of acts as a sealer, and I put it all over the top of it as well so that I can add more mixed media to the top and it won't sink in and seep through. So I'm just looking for some paints to use now, and I've pulled out my Jane Davenport watercolor palette. I don't know if I use that actually. And I've got some Tombos here. So these are Tombow dual brush markers. You can grab them from Officeworks in Australia or Eckersley's. I've got some, that chunky one is a Pitt Artist brush pen. I've got a video, is it this month or next month? Maybe it's next month. Yes, it is next month. I have a video all about my favorite pens and markers, so stay tuned for that next month. I am using some of the Jane Davenport paints, and this is also another kind of messy stage. I'm just slapping paint everywhere, and I just wanted to make it blue and flowy. And don't worry, I am going to fix up her head, as you can see here. I'm just grabbing some white gesso just to cover up the hair that was already there and give her a little bit of a side fringe going on there. And then while the gesso is still wet, I just go ahead and put some more paint over the top. So if you're someone who's not confident with drawing faces like me, then this is a really easy technique to do a face or a girl or a person in your journal without having to actually do the face part. Next up, I wanted to do a bit of a different floral headdress for her. I wanted something to stand out a little bit. So I grabbed some excess basil marshmallow cardstock that I had. I always keep the cut off parts when I'm doing a scrapbook layout for things like this. And I'm just using some stamps and my Stays On black ink, which is permanent. So it doesn't matter if paint or water gets on it, it won't smudge. You can use any type of permanent black ink here. And I'm going to do a bit of fussy cutting and a bit of painting to make her floral headpiece. So these stamps are from Here, There and Everywhere. I showed you the names of the butterfly and the heart one before. This one I think is from a Winnie and Walter, this floral one that I'm doing now. That really big flower, I don't know where it's from. It's one of my favorites. It could be Prima. I got it a very, very long time ago, but I'm sure if you went to something like Simon Says Stamp online or scrapbook.com or something and typed in floral stamp, you'd find a lot available. I need a couple more flower stamps because I feel like I've only got these two, and I feel like I've exhausted them a little bit. I need to find some more to add to my stash. That's, I think, what my next little spree will be on, maybe closer to Christmas time. So I'm just stamping way too many images, and then I decided to do something which I haven't done before. I got the inspiration for this from some of the new crate paper collections that have like leaves and flowers with text in the background. I grabbed this tiny little stamp that I had that had like newsprint text on it, and I decided to stamp it over the top of the flowers to give it a little extra something. And I really, really like the effect. So I highly recommend trying to layer your stamps a little bit to change them up. I just think it's a really cool outcome. So I grabbed my Jane Davenport Brights watercolor palette here, and I'm wetting my cardstock first. Now the reason why I'm doing that is because I find the color flows really, really nicely when the cardstock is already wet. And I'm just grabbing a few different pink tones and red tones and purples and just plopping them on anywhere I can. Now the water kind of makes it flow and bleed into each other, and I really like that look. If you wanted to do this and only have one color, I would recommend not wetting the background. I want them to be quite messy and watercolory kind of effect. Now, the reason why I'm not caring about where the water goes out of the lines is because I am going to fussy cut all of these little buggers out, and it took a while, but it was just a nice little activity to do while sitting on the couch. I think it was just Archie had just gone to sleep, so I needed a quiet activity that was nearby, so it was a good time to do it then. I'm adding these leaves, and I had 3 different types of leaves, and I kind of wanted to do 3 different color palettes. So one of them's very yellowy, one of them's yellow and green, and one of them's quite greeny. And I'm definitely going to try this technique again. I really enjoyed it. And it's something where you can't, if you're a bit scared of mixed media, it's something that you can't really go wrong with. And the good thing is, because it's on a separate piece, if you stuff it up, you can just put it in the bin and get a different piece. You haven't wrecked a whole page. You don't have to rip out a page. You don't have to paint over it. You can literally just toss it aside. Not that I would, if I stuffed one of these up, I would probably just cut it out and use it for some layering in a future art journal page. So you can see a bit of a close up there. I purposely didn't want the color to cover the entire image, and I put water everywhere, and then the water got in everything, and it just wasn't working. There's sleepy little Archie. So this is my crew that I had next to me while I was scrapping today. I've got little Frida down there, and then over here we have Poppet. I've got all the gang, and then there's my fort. So this is the reality. I make a huge mess when I scrapbook and art, and there's just stuff everywhere. I need a wider desk. I just need an entire room that is a desk, but that would be worse because nothing would ever get put away. It would just pile up. This is the step that I think really made these pop. You can see I've already done the ones on the left. Is I just got a paint pen and I outlined all of the images because you could see the white cardstock on the sides of the leaves, and I didn't really like that. And I found that this step just brought them to a different level. It just made them really kind of pop arty, and I love that style. I actually paint a lot of canvases around my house in like a pop art style. I do Pin-Up Girls and kind of Roy Lichtenstein style art, if you know that artist. So anything with a big black bold outline, I'm a big fan of. So after I had done all of these, I set them to the side, and it was time to start sticking. Oh no, not yet, Del, not yet. Now I'm using some paint pens apparently, and I've got this nice one in Aqua. I use the Posca brand of paint pens, but any paint pen will do. Obviously this was a new one, and so I had to dance with it quite a lot to make the paint start to happen, but it is my new favorite color in the world. Look at that color. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. I decided to do a little bit on her hair before sticking down the floral headpiece because I thought it would be easier, and I have no plan to this. I'm just scribbling and just going everywhere. I think it's important when you do this step to use a couple of different tones. It's also nice to have some different thicknesses. So you can see that darker blue is that Faber-Castell Pitt pen, and it's quite thick compared to this little skinny little white one that I'm doing. I also think it's important to have areas that are quite liney and then other areas that are quite empty. But other than that, I just go wherever my pen takes me. So I kind of worked out where hello bunnies. The bunnies are here, and they look like they're in a bit of a ruckus mood. What are you up to? Frida's trying to eat the couch. That's always a good sign. I kind of worked out where I wanted the big flowers to be, and then I was just going to stick the little ones in the back, and I'm using just some Scotch quick dry adhesive, that's what it's called now, and I'm just slipping those little leaves under. I did go back and add a little bit more glue at the end because the cardstock is quite thick. Some of the edges weren't sticking down properly, and I really, really love this layout, and it's just coming together. Every little step just makes it that little bit more, I don't know, it just makes it a bit more bolder. So I really found that the black outline of those flowers was probably my favorite part of this whole layout. The effect that it had. I hadn't done that before, so it's definitely something I'm going to try again. So I'm just adding a little bit of white here, and you can't really see it on camera, but in person you can see, and it just adds a little bit more dimension to those flowers and adds a little special little something. So adding a little bit more white here and there, and I'm watching, you can see in the corner, I'm watching some YouTube while I'm arting. That's my favorite time to watch YouTube, while I'm actually creating something. The worst time to watch YouTube is at like 2 a.m. in the morning, and you find something really inspirational that you want to try and you can't because you're meant to be sleeping. So I decided that I needed even more little hairs in her hair, little hairs in her big hair. And then I found this quote on Pinterest. Pinterest is a gold mine for quotes. It really is. Oh, did I do some off camera? I must have. I used those paint pens and I did a little bit of things in the background. So I did some little green aqua little dashes, and I did some white little dots. You'll see in the close-ups at the end. There's lots of close-up videos in the end. Frida, what are you into? Aaron, can you say what Frida's into? Frida's being very suspicious near my desk right now and trying to pull all sorts of things out. I decided to grab a paint pen and add a little bit more lash to this girl. I'm always a fan of a big lash. Not that I don't wear fake eyelashes, but I really like the look of it in my artwork. I'm adding these little clusters that I'm a huge fan of at the moment, little dots and plus signs and hearts, and I don't know, I think it's nice to overlap it with the background and the photo. It just kind of blends the photo into the background a little bit more, and I'm all done. So this is the page. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you'd like to see more art journal process videos from me. I might also do some that are real time in the future. It is easier with Archie to do them not real time at the moment, but if there's time on weekends when Aaron can take Archie for a little bit, I can give it a go. And let me know if you're an art journaler and how you feel about mixed media. Are you a beginner? Let me know, because I'd love to make videos that are targeted to where all of you guys are. Thanks for watching, and this girl is actually going to appear in next month's printables. Woohoo! I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye!